So let's get into a couple of questions. So this is not the first time that the market has expressed massive disappointment with the incumbent supplier. You heard Kelly say on the panel that we're going to live in a world of multiple currencies. What do you think makes this time different than past?
Yeah, I feel for our friends at Nielsen right now. I mean, it is kind of, it was like an NBA game where every side sort of beats them up from time to time, depending on when you're winning or losing. But it feels like we're all in a very different world now. And, the fact is that our lives have changed. I mean, we're coming out of a pandemic, and, what was truthful in the 1950s and the 20th century about the fact that we were all gathered around one screen every night at prime time is, pretty far cry from reality today. And so, a lot of things have been changing over the last 70, 80 years, but that seemed to have accelerated, in the last 18 months. I think maybe I was an early adopter as a cord cutter, but, that seems to be a much more mainstream phenomenon.
Yep.
And, we're watching video on many screens, including, long-form television and movies. And then, we've got movie theaters who basically said we're not open.
Yep.
And so first-run movies coming direct to streaming was something that, when I was running BitTorrent and I came to LA, to talk up to the studios about digital distribution, they said, get to the back of the line. The movie theaters pay the bills around in this town. So you're at the end, and we'll figure out if we can even embrace you as a peer-to-peer company. But here we are today where, there's massive upheaval. The world is different. I used to love to go to the store, even though I'm kind of a tech guy, but I used to like to buy fruit, and then during the pandemic, I ended up subscribing to this grab bag of fruit, that would just arrive because you couldn't get to the store. And, it was kind of like the app nexus of fruit. You just get this grab bag and you don't know what you're actually getting in there.
Nice. So the cynic in me says, yeah, everything you said is right, but there are still a lot of companies in this room pay the incumbent provider, they who shall not be named, a lot of money. So do you think any of this is just using the market as leverage, or do you really believe the market is willing to accept multiple currencies?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've been doing this, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of digital folks in the room. And how many currencies do we have for viewability alone?
Yep.
So we've got an industry that's adopted multiple currencies in the most rigorous environment, which is digital and programmatic. And TV is just, sort of now existing in a different paradigm that feels a lot more digital than it has historically. Now, I'm super optimistic about this because, although I think many of us consider ourselves digital natives, there's nothing like television. It's a wonderful screen. It's a wonderful environment to build brands, to tell stories. It's just now getting that plus the rigor of new measurement. When you've got new forms of currency in the television, you really get the best of both worlds.
Yep. So this could be a race of 4 or 5 different companies. I mean, look, I think one thing that makes this different than other times in the career is just how many other companies are suited to play in this space. As you think about Samba, give the room 2 or 3 reasons for why you believe Samba should be taken seriously as a contender in this race.
All right, so this is a company that's been sued by Nielsen, right? It's not expected that you would hear me talk favorably about Nielsen, but look, they did the hard thing. They went to consumers' home, they've set up a meter, multiple meters in certain cases, and they paid them for their data, which, with all of the new companies talking about currency today, how many of them can say they've done that?
Yep.
And so I give credit to Nielsen. I think they were able to maintain a currency for a long time as a result of that model.
Yep.
And, I think the companies that we should really be seriously considering today are ones that are also first party in their relationship with consumers and their data. Like Nielsen, sort of took a ComScore playbook when it created digital ratings, and they bought data from Facebook.
Yep.
Zuck ends up in front of Congress trying to explain that he's an advertising company, and then he's got to go take that data back from Nielsen And now Nielsen loses digital ratings because literally their identity spine and that whole data footprint's gone now. I think that's the cautionary tale. Is we're talking about measurement today and tomorrow and the day after. We really need to think about, what is the next generation currency? What's going to replicate the stability that Nielsen had for 70 years in its first-party data? And it can't be someone that's brokering data from one of the first parties. And Samba is, by the way, a first-party data controller. We have millions of consumer relationships that we form with consumers on their TV. And there's a half a dozen others out there that have great data sets, and those are the ones to watch.
Yep. When that makes a lot of sense. When you and I did our prep call, the other thing you talked about, which I think is really important, and hopefully we'll hear it on the next panel, is, look, we're not just, and we heard it before, we're not just measuring linear TV spots and dots, right? We're building this connective tissue across all of these platforms. Samba's uniquely positioned to play in this space. Talk a little bit about the connection of identity and data.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think the first party data that you can create in a television is hopefully today, after some legal precedent set in the U.S., it's all opt-in. And so you end up with a relationship with the consumer. Many of us that do this establish an ID, that's either anonymous or associated with the owner of that device. That's a really valuable thing, and in this case of Samba, what we've done is we've married that ID space with other ID space in the industry, so that we can create the interoperability, that Adam was talking about earlier, like to be able to move the data in an environment where it resolves with other data sets, so that you can create a much more larger and holistic view of truth, which is video consumed on one device should be matched with video that's consumed on another device, that can be matched with attributes of the household, that can be matched with first-party data that comes from CRM and other systems. So now you have a very holistic view of the consumer. It's a beautiful thing. The question is that going to be married to one pool of ad inventory or many pools? And in the case of a walled garden strategy, it's about playing in the laws of scarcity, where you basically want to make that data scarce and marry it to one pool of inventory where that ad sale is enriched by that data. And we know that playbook. It's created some of the biggest companies in the world. Or there's another playbook, which is to be able to say, let's use data and identity to enrich many businesses. Let's not play a game of opacity and scarcity. Let's play a game of abundance and transparency. That's our playbook. That's what we stand for as a company.
Got it. So obviously this has happened pretty quickly, right? I mean, a year ago, nobody thought the incumbent was teetering maybe the way they are. Have you made any changes to Samba's roadmap to take advantage of the opportunity that you see out there?
Yeah, you bet. So we credit to our friends over at Disney, who took a flyer on us and basically said, they didn't tell us what they were doing with their acquisition strategy, but now they own a very large amount of very valuable inventory across broadcast, cable, streaming, digital. And they basically asked us to help them cluster that together so that we could deduplicate their reach and then just make our data available to them to fill in the gaps of their offline world. When they were removed by a cable company from the consumer, we helped fill that gap. And then they basically said, we like a few of your measurements, Samba, but there's a wealth of other currencies that are going to want to measure Disney. And so, through a roadmap we created with them, we've enabled, I think, nearly a dozen new currencies to take place. I think Disney Ad Sales is out with a really awesome list of some of you who are in the measurement world or in the agency world. They're basically said, we have something that we care about, whether it's top of funnel, mid funnel, whatever, lower funnel. We want to be able to know, how does Disney perform? And I think Disney is quite happy to have those conversations. There's some Disney folks who can probably talk more about this, but this was a new thing for us in the last few years. It's about taking our data out of one single type of monetization model and allowing an industry, both on the buy side and the sell side, to benefit from it. Yeah,
it's great. One thing I think we sometimes don't think about is how important building tools for direct-to-consumer business analytics is to our business. So one other thing you and I talked about on the call was go-to-market and the importance of the MRC. Obviously, we can't be in a world where it's going to take the MRC 5 years to accredit all these different incumbents. What's your vision for how you go to market, establish credibility and visibility into what Samba provides?
I would love your take on this, actually, Howard. So I know you've got not only the Nielsen credential, but you've also been at a major media company. We all know that the MRC is, obviously an industry group, that represents a very large number of the largest media owners, and making sure that whatever comes into the currency world is vetted and truthful. And so, I think that's a necessary step for all forms of currencies. But is it necessary to move the industry forward? I wouldn't hold the industry back, for just that
That's
level
exactly
of
the
that
concern.
process.
Yeah, that's exactly the concern.
Appreciate your thoughts on that.
No, look, I think it's incumbent on anybody in this room to provide the necessary level of transparency to the market, to your end users. I don't think that means it has to have the MRC seal of approval before it's used. I don't think we could afford to wait. All right, last question. I think we're at the end of our time. Where do you see the market 24 months from now? Are there 3 or 4 healthy currencies living in the marketplace?
At least, I think how many companies participated in the NBC RFP to just identify new forms of currency? I think there's, many in digital, and we expect the same thing to happen in TV. And I think what we're going to hopefully see in that time horizon is that you do get the household level view, because the television isn't the one screen in your living room anymore. It is a format. It's a very amazing form of storytelling that we're consuming across all devices and around the home and outside the home. And that is going to present alongside video an awesome, sort of wealth of reach that needs to be counted. And then it's going to present an amazing amount of business outcomes if measured correctly and driven correctly. And so for every category and for every vertical, there's going to be a currency that makes sense for that client, including the client's own first-party data. So that, I think, is the future.
Great. Well, thanks for your time. Good luck.